Life has a way of teaching us lessons in the most unexpected moments. One of those lessons is about absence. People rarely recognize the value of what they have until it's no longer in front of them. The day you choose to step back, the day you decide to walk away, is the day he starts to feel the weight of his choices. He begins to lose himself, not because you were his world, but because he finally realizes how much he took you for granted. Let me tell you something. Your presence is power. Your presence brings energy, life, and meaning. When you leave, that energy disappears, and suddenly he's left facing an emptiness he doesn't know how to fill. This isn't about revenge, it's not about punishment, it's about awakening, because sometimes walking away is the only way someone finally wakes up to the reality of what they're losing. Now, this moment, this shift isn't just about him. It's about you. It's about understanding your worth, your strength, your identity. When you finally step away from the table where love and respect are no longer being served, you don't lose, you rise. He's the one who loses himself, because for the first time, he's confronted with a world without you in it. Presence is power, and most people never truly realize this until it's gone. Think about it for a moment. When you walk into a room, you don't just bring your physical body, you bring energy, emotions, light, and a vibration that affects everyone around you. Your presence is not silent, even when you don't say a single word. It's the comfort of knowing you're there, the reassurance of your attention, the safety of your consistency, and the strength of your love. When you're in someone's life, they often begin to assume that presence will always be there, like the air they breathe or the sun that rises every morning. They stop noticing it because it becomes their normal, and when something becomes normal, it's easy to take for granted. But the moment that presence disappears, everything shifts. Suddenly, the air feels different, the silence feels heavier, and the world doesn't look the same. The person who thought they could live without your energy realizes that the room feels colder, the days feel longer, and the nights feel emptier. Your presence is more than just company. It's the invisible glue that holds together the pieces of someone's world. When that glue is removed, things begin to fall apart. He starts to lose himself not because you took anything away from him, but because he never truly understood how much of himself was stabilized by your presence. Your laughter echoes in his memory, your words replay in his mind, and the simple comfort of you being there becomes a haunting absence he can't escape. That's the power of presence. It leaves an imprint. It's like a song that gets stuck in your head long after the music stops playing. He begins to realize that the reason he feels unsteady is because your energy used to balance his chaos. The reason he feels lost is because your presence used to anchor his drifting. What makes this even more powerful is that presence doesn't have to be loud to matter. Sometimes it's in the quiet ways you supported him, the small acts you did without recognition, the love you gave without demanding anything back. All of those moments seemed invisible while you were there, but they were the very foundation he stood on. When that foundation crumbles, he begins to stumble, and in that stumbling, he starts to lose himself. Presence is power because it cannot be replaced by distractions or substitutes. He may try to fill the emptiness with noise, with people, with habits, but nothing feels the same. Your unique presence carries a frequency that no one else can replicate. It's not about what you gave, it's about who you are, and when who you are steps away, the void screams louder than any argument ever could. He begins to realize that life without your energy is a shadow of what it once was. That's when the truth sets in. Your presence was his compass, and without it, he is lost. Absence forces reflection in a way that presence never could. When you are there, your energy often shields him from himself. He doesn't have to sit with his thoughts because your laughter fills the silence, your conversations keep the noise alive, and your actions constantly pull him forward. But when you're gone, everything becomes still. And it is in that stillness that the truth comes crashing in. Absence is like a mirror. Suddenly he has no choice but to look at himself, to face his own decisions, his own patterns, his own neglect. He can no longer escape the reality of what he has lost, and that realization begins to sting in ways he never expected. Silence can be louder than any words. When you step away, the quiet becomes unbearable. He tries to distract himself, but nothing works. The phone doesn't light up with your messages anymore, the sound of your voice doesn't greet him, and even the smallest routines feel disrupted. It is in those little voids that the reflection begins. He notices how much he depended on you for balance, for comfort, for meaning, and the more he notices, the more the regret builds. Absence is not just an empty space, it's a teacher. It forces him to review the moments he took for granted, the times he chose pride over love, the ways he ignored the very person who was holding him together. Reflection in absence isn't always gentle. It doesn't whisper, it screams. Every memory that surfaces hits harder than the last. He remembers the way you supported him, the way you believed in him when he didn't believe in himself, the way you gave when you had every reason to withhold. Those reflections cut deep because they reveal the truth that he had something extraordinary and he let it slip away. Absence forces him to see not only who you were, but who he failed to be. It magnifies the gap between the man he was with you and the man he is without you. That gap becomes unbearable because it shows him how much of his identity was tied to your presence. The human mind resists reflection when life feels comfortable, but absence removes that comfort. It strips away the illusions, the excuses, the distractions. In that stripped-down reality, he sees everything clearly. He sees the depth of your worth, the magnitude of your presence, and the cost of his inattention. And while he may try to push those thoughts away, absence has a way of circling back. It doesn't let him rest, because reflection keeps reminding him of what's missing. This is why absence is so powerful. It's not just about leaving a physical space, it's about creating a silence that makes him confront everything he's been avoiding. It's about showing him that your presence wasn't guaranteed and that his actions, or lack of them, had consequences. In that reflection, he begins to feel the weight of loss, and that's when he starts losing himself. Because the hardest truth to face is knowing you had something invaluable, and now it's gone. Boundaries define worth, and the moment you decide to walk away, that boundary speaks louder than any words you could ever say. People often test limits without even realizing it. They assume that as long as you continue to give, you'll always be there. They begin to believe that your patience is endless, your forgiveness automatic, and your presence permanent. But when you finally draw the line, when you decide that being undervalued, unheard, or taken for granted is no longer acceptable, that act becomes a declaration of your worth. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are gates meant to protect your value, your peace, and your dignity. For him, your decision to leave becomes the most powerful boundary you could ever set. It tells him, without needing a single word, that you will not settle for less than you deserve. It tells him that love without respect is not love at all, and that presence without appreciation is wasted energy. He may have thought you would never step away, but the moment you do, the message is crystal clear. I know my worth, even if you failed to see it. That realization doesn't just sting, it shakes his entire identity. Because suddenly, he is confronted with the truth that his actions, or lack of them, cost him someone irreplaceable. The strength of boundaries lies in the courage it takes to set them. Walking away is never easy. It requires you to put aside fear, attachment, and comfort, and instead choose self-respect. But once you take that step, everything changes. He no longer sees you as the person who will tolerate neglect or half-hearted love. He sees you as someone who refuses to compromise your dignity. That shift is powerful because it forces him to reevaluate not only his behavior, but also his own sense of control. Boundaries create a mirror. When you stand firm in your value, he is forced to confront how little he honored it. When you step back, he is forced to notice the gap between the love you deserved and the love he gave. That realization is heavy because it uncovers his failures, his complacency, and his inability to rise to the standard you quietly set all along. And in that awareness, he begins to feel the loss more deeply because he knows it was preventable. The truth is, boundaries don't push the right people away. They filter out the wrong behavior. If he truly cared, if he truly valued you, your boundary becomes a wake-up call. But if he fails to rise to it, then your boundary saves you from a cycle of diminishing self-worth. Either way, you win, because by leaving, by refusing to compromise on your value, you affirm to yourself and to the world that your worth is not negotiable. And while he may spiral into confusion, regret, and loss, you stand taller, stronger, and more certain of who you are. It's in that moment that he starts to lose himself, not because you punished him, but because he realizes too late that you valued yourself more than he ever did. And that boundary, that decision, is what sets you free. Loss awakens desire in ways that comfort never can. When something, or someone, is always there, it's easy to become numb to its value. The human mind has a strange habit of overlooking what is constant, assuming it will always remain. But the instant that presence is gone, the absence creates a hunger that words can't describe. He may have lived every day with you by his side, yet never truly saw the depth of what you brought into his life. The moment you leave, the blindfold is ripped off, and suddenly he sees with piercing clarity just how much you mattered. That is when the desire begins to rise, and it rises with an intensity he didn't expect. Loss has a way of magnifying everything. What once felt ordinary suddenly feels extraordinary in memory. The little things you did, the way you smiled, the way you supported him, the way you simply existed in his world, become treasures in his mind. When you were present, he overlooked them, but now each of those moments plays like a highlight reel in his head, and with every replay the longing grows stronger. Desire is born in the contrast between what he had and what he no longer has. There's a raw truth here. People don't crave abundance when they're surrounded by it. They crave it when it's gone. When he had your time, your patience, your love, he thought he could put it off, thought he could always come back to it later. But the day you step away, that illusion shatters. Later doesn't exist anymore. Suddenly the clock has run out and he's left with empty hands. And when the reality of loss hits, desire surges like a storm. It consumes his thoughts, his emotions, even his sense of self. He begins to ache for what he once dismissed, but here's what makes this desire so powerful. It isn't just about missing you, it's about missing the version of himself he only knew when you were there. With you, he felt steadier, stronger, more complete. Without you, that reflection of himself is gone. So the desire isn't just for your presence, it's for the way your presence made him feel. That's why it cuts so deeply. He's not only longing for you, he's longing for the version of himself that only existed when you stood beside him. This awakening doesn't come gently. It comes like a flood, overwhelming and relentless. He finds himself replaying conversations, wishing he had listened more. He remembers moments where he could have chosen differently, but didn't, and now those opportunities are gone. Desire becomes his shadow, following him everywhere, reminding him of what he lost and what he can never fully reclaim. Loss awakens desire because it reveals the truth that was hidden in plain sight. The love, the care, the presence that he took for granted now shines like a light he can't reach, and the harder he reaches, the further it feels. This is where the regret deepens, where the longing consumes him, and where he truly starts to lose himself, because desire without fulfillment is the heaviest burden a heart can carry. Stepping away is strength, not weakness, though many people confuse the two. Walking away from someone you've invested time, energy, and love into can feel like tearing a piece of your own heart out. That's why so many stay longer than they should, out of fear, out of hope, or out of the illusion that holding on makes them stronger. But the real truth is this: it takes far more strength to step away than it ever does to stay in a place where you are undervalued. Staying is easy. Staying means you don't have to face the unknown, you don't have to rebuild, and you don't have to confront your fears. Leaving, on the other hand, requires courage. It demands that you choose yourself over your comfort zone. When you finally decide to step away, you are making a bold statement, not just to him, but to yourself. You are saying, I deserve better than this. I am worth more than crumbs. I refuse to shrink myself for someone who cannot see my value. That decision, though painful, is powerful. It transforms you from someone waiting to be chosen into someone who chooses themselves. And while he may view your departure as weakness, while he may try to convince himself or others that you gave up, deep down he knows the truth. You had the strength to do what he could not. You had the strength to act. Strength is not measured by how much you can endure in silence. True strength is measured by the moment you refuse to endure any longer. It is the courage to say enough. It is the wisdom to recognize that love without respect is not love, and presence without appreciation is not connection. Walking away does not mean you didn't love deeply. It means you loved yourself enough to no longer settle for less than you deserve. That is the highest form of strength. For him, your departure is a shock. He may have believed that you would never leave, that your loyalty would keep you tied to him no matter how little he gave. But when you step away, that illusion shatters. He begins to see that your love was never weakness. It was a gift, and now that gift is gone. And in that realization, he starts to unravel, because your strength exposes his weakness. Your courage to leave reveals his inability to appreciate, to grow, to rise. And here is the irony. The very act he might call weakness is the act that proves your power. Because while he begins to lose himself in regret and longing, you begin to rediscover yourself. You step into a new space, one where your worth is no longer questioned, one where your boundaries are honored, one where your spirit can breathe again. That is not weakness, that is transformation, that is freedom. In the end, stepping away is the greatest act of self-respect you can ever show. It's not about punishing him, it's about protecting you. And when you do, he begins to feel the weight of his loss. He loses himself in the absence you created, while you gain yourself in the strength you embraced. Your value is not negotiable, and the day you embrace this truth is the day everything changes. Too often, people fall into the trap of believing that their worth depends on how others see them. They start thinking, if he notices me, I must be valuable. If he chooses me, then I must be worthy. But your value does not rise or fall based on someone else's recognition. It does not increase when you are praised, and it does not decrease when you are ignored. Your value is constant. It is built into who you are, into the love you give, into the presence you bring, and no one, not him, not anyone, has the power to negotiate that. When you walk away, you are not only sending him a message, you are reminding yourself of this unshakable truth. You are showing the world, and most importantly yourself, that you refuse to bargain with your dignity. You are not a discount version of yourself, marked down because someone failed to see your worth. You are priceless, and your value is set. The moment you stand firm in this belief, everything shifts. You no longer cling to relationships where you are undervalued, because you know that staying there would mean betraying yourself, and betrayal of self is the deepest wound anyone can carry. For him, your departure becomes a brutal awakening. He begins to see that he cannot lower your worth simply by failing to honor it. He cannot erase your value by overlooking it. In fact, the opposite happens. Your decision to leave magnifies it. Suddenly, your absence forces him to recognize just how much weight you carried in his life. What he once dismissed as normal now feels irreplaceable. What he once saw as guaranteed now feels like the rarest treasure. By walking away, you didn't lose value, you revealed it. You exposed it in a way he could no longer deny. This is where his unraveling begins, because he realizes too late that your value was never negotiable. It wasn't a question of whether he saw it. It was a question of whether he honored it. And now, without you, he is left to wrestle with the cost of not doing so. That cost is heavy. It shows up in the emptiness of his days, in the regret that gnaws at him, in the longing that won't leave his mind. He starts to lose himself because the truth becomes unavoidable. He let go of someone who knew their worth, and that kind of strength cannot be replaced. Your value being non-negotiable is not arrogance. It is alignment. It is standing in your truth even when others fail to see it. It is knowing that love is only real when it comes with respect, and that any relationship that asks you to diminish your worth is not love at all. When you stand in this truth, you rise above doubt, above fear, above the need for validation, and in that rising you reclaim yourself. So remember this, your value doesn't wait for recognition, it doesn't beg for attention, and it doesn't vanish when someone overlooks it. It is set, it is permanent, and it is powerful. And when you finally walk away from anyone who cannot honor it, you don't lose, you win. Because while he may start to lose himself, you fully find yourself. In the end, the truth is simple yet profound. The day you leave, he starts to lose himself. Your presence was never just about being there. It was about the energy you carried, the stability you provided, and the light you brought into his world. He never fully realized it when you were there because presence often feels invisible, but the moment you are gone, that absence roars like thunder, shaking him into a reality he can't escape. It is in your absence that he finally recognizes the power of your presence, and that recognition cuts him deeper than anything else ever could. Your departure forces him into reflection, into a silence that he cannot drown out. The distractions that once filled the void no longer satisfy, because your absence makes him confront himself in a way your presence never did. He replays moments, choices, and mistakes, and each reflection reminds him of how he undervalued something irreplaceable. This is when he begins to unravel, because regret is a heavy weight, and reflection makes it heavier with every passing day. But your leaving is not just about what he loses, it's about what you gain. By stepping away, you set a boundary that defines your worth. You send a message that your value cannot be diminished by neglect or indifference. In doing so, you awaken desire in him, a desire that is born not from abundance but from loss. Yet while he aches for what he can no longer have, you find strength in the act of choosing yourself. Stepping away is not weakness. It is the ultimate act of courage, the bold declaration that you will no longer settle for anything less than respect and love that match your worth. And this worth, your worth, is not negotiable. It does not bend because he failed to honor it. It does not shrink because he ignored it. Your value is fixed, timeless, and unshakable. By leaving, you illuminate this truth not only to him but to yourself. While he spirals into confusion and longing, you step into alignment, into a deeper understanding of who you are and what you deserve. That is the turning point where you rise higher, even as he begins to lose himself in the shadow of his own mistakes. So let this be your reminder: leaving is not the end, it is the beginning. It is the beginning of reclaiming yourself, of walking in strength, of living in truth. He may lose himself when you go, but you find yourself more fully than ever before. And that is the power of your journey. It is not about what he feels in your absence. It is about what you discover in your freedom. For while he unravels in regret, you rise in resilience. And in that rising, you prove to yourself and the world that your worth was never in question. It was always undeniable. Thank you for walking with me through this message today. Thank you for opening your heart, for listening, and for allowing these words to connect with your own story. Remember, this isn't just about loss, it's about growth. It's about understanding that your presence carries power, your absence carries weight, and your worth is never up for negotiation. As you step forward from here, carry this truth with you. You are stronger than you think, braver than you feel, and more valuable than you've ever been told. Walking away is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter where you rise, where you reclaim yourself, and where you live in the fullness of your strength. So as I close today, I leave you with this. Never forget who you are, never settle for less than you deserve, and never allow anyone to convince you that your value depends on their recognition. You are enough. You have always been enough, and the day you choose yourself is the day everything changes. Thank you, God bless you, and goodbye.